Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about the chapter breathing and exchange of gases. So, breathing and exchange of gases in this chapter, we will talk about the human respiratory system. So, we all know that the main function of respiration is to synthesize the ATP, and ATP is used for our metabolic processes. So, during the respiration, whatever the food we eat, that food is utilized for the synthesis of ATP by the process called oxidation of food. And in that oxidation of food, the ATP is generated with the use of oxygen. And the byproduct is also there is carbon dioxide. So in this chapter, we will talk about these all things about this respiratory system. So we all know that whatever food we eat, so there are different stages of that in that process. So first we eat the food, and that process is called ingestion. Then after the ingestion of food, the food get digested in our alimentary canal. After the digestion, the simple form of food. In the digestion of process, the complex part of the food is converted into the simple and absorbable form, and that absorbable form is then absorbed into the blood or into the lymph, which is then used for various metabolic processes. So after the digestion, the food is converted into the simple and absorbable substances, which then utilize into the oxidation of food, which by the product byproduct of which is the ATP. So oxidation of food is basically a catabolic process. So we all know that oxidation of food is a catabolic process. Catabolic process means that this breakdown of simple substances. Simple substances means such as we talk about the glucose, glucose which we get from the digestion of different starch, and then there is amino acid, and there is fatty acid. These all simple substances will be used in the presence of oxygen to derive the energy, and energy is utilized in the form of ATP. Energy is utilized in the form generated in the form of ATP, and in this process carbon dioxide is generated. So if we write the simple equation of this oxidation of food, so if we talk about the glucose, so glucose is C6H12O6. So this glucose will be oxidized in the presence of oxygen, and the byproduct of which is the ATP. So byproduct of which is the ATP with the yielding of this carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide is acts as the metabolic waste, which is then liberated from our body through the expiration process. So this is the simple equation of this oxidation of food. So now we are talking with this oxygen. Oxygen is utilized in this oxidation of food. So where do we get this oxygen? So we get oxygen through the inspiration. When we inhale the air, the oxygen get into our body, and that oxygen is utilized for during this oxidation process. So this inhalation and exhalation process, when we breathe out, that process is called as inspiration, exhalation or expiration. And when we breathe in, that process is called inspiration or inhalation. So these two processes combinedly are called breathing. So breathing is simple is a process. Breathing is a process in which there is exchange of oxygen from the atmosphere. So when we inhale or inspire, oxygen get into our body, and when we exhale, carbon dioxide is released from our body. So carbon dioxide is produced during the oxidation of food, which we saw early through the reaction. So this process is called breathing. So breathing, if we say that definition of breathing is the process of exchange of oxygen from with the atmosphere with the carbon dioxide which is produced in the cell during the process of oxidation. And this breathing is commonly known as respiration, although this respiration is altogether a different process. If we talk about the respiration, so respiration is total of 5 step process in which breathing is itself a process under the this respiration, but we commonly know this breathing as respiration. We commonly say that we respire, but actually we are trying to say that is we are breathing. Clear? So next, if we see, there are different animals, there are different category of animals from the primitive animals to the higher animals. If we talk about the primitive animals such as porifera, if we talk about simple animals such as porifera and complex animals such as animals, so there are different categories of animal, and in these animals they respire through the different organs or different structures. So this respiratory organ will depend on this respiratory organ this respiratory organ will depend on this level of organization. Level of organization, we in animal we see the level of organization at the cell level, at the tissue level, at the tissue level, at the organ level, and on the organ system level. So there are different level of organization. The primitive one is the cellular level, and the advanced one is called organ system. So according to the level of organization in different animals and their habitat, their respiratory organs will also differ. So if we talk about the lower invertebrates such as sponges, coelentrates, flatworms, they do not have any specific respiratory organs, because if we talk about the level of organization in these animals, sponges have cellular level of organization, coelentrates have tissue level of organization, flatworms have organ level of organization. So they do not have specific organs to respire. So the respiration or breathing takes place simply through the simple diffusion over their body surface. And in this simple diffusion, there will be exchange of oxygen and there will be exchange of carbon dioxide. But if we move further, if we move towards the higher animals such as earthworm. So earthworm belongs to the phylum, and this phylum is called Annelida. So earthworm belongs to the phylum called Annelida. And in Annelida, the level of organization is organ system. In Annelida, the level of organization is organ system. So in this earthworm, they use their moist cuticle. Moist cuticle, or we can say this moist cuticle is nothing but the moist skin, which is used for the respiration. Among the insects belongs to the phylum called Arthropoda. Insects belong to the phylum called Arthropoda. Insects belong to the phylum called Arthropoda. So in insects, there is tracheal system. So insects generally have terrestrial habitat. So insects, if we talk about the habitat of this, So in insects belong to the phylum Arthropoda. Insects belong to the phylum Arthropoda, and the habitat of these insects, if we talk about the habitat, they have terrestrial habitat. Terrestrial habitat means they live on land, etc. So they have terrestrial habitat. So those arthropods which have terrestrial habitat, they have tracheal system as their respiratory organ. If we talk about the aquatic arthropods and mollusks, they simply use their gills for the respiration, and the respiration through the gills is called branchial respiration. Respiration through the gills is called branchial respiration. So among the different animals, we have seen that it depends on the level of organization and habitat. So among different animals, depending on the level of organization and their habitat, their respiratory organ will also differ. So we have seen these all examples here. Next, if we talk about the यहाँ पर if we talk about the so if we talk about the respiration through the lungs, when we respire through the lungs, this process is called pulmonary respiration. This process is called pulmonary respiration. So among the vertebrates starts from the fishes till the mammals. So in fishes, respiration takes place through the gills, and we have seen that respiration through the gills is called branchial respiration. In amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, respiration through the lungs, and this respiration is called pulmonary respiration. Among the amphibians, they also respire through the moist skin. They also respire through the moist skin. And the respiration through the skin is called cutaneous respiration. Respiration through the skin is called cutaneous respiration. So these are the different animals and their different respiratory organs. So next we start with the human respiratory system. So if we talk about the human respiratory system, it starts from the external nostril. It starts from the external nostril, which is located above the upper lip. So upper lip, it is located above the upper lip, which is called external nostril. And there is a pair of nostril. This pair of nostril enters into the nasal chamber through a passage known as nasal passage. Through a passage known as nasal passage. So if you draw a rough diagram, so this is external nostril, and so this is the upper lip. So if we level this, this will be called upper lip, and the above the upper lip there is portion called nostril. Because it is located outside, it is called external nostril. And from this external nostril there arises a chamber. There arises a chamber. So this chamber is called nasal chamber. So this chamber is called nasal chamber. So this chamber is called nasal chamber. So this external nostril starts from external nostril, enters into this nasal chamber, and here there is opening which is called nasal passage, and this nasal chamber enters into this next structure known as pharynx. So enters into this next structure known as pharynx. Pharynx is also known as throat, and pharynx is the common passage for food and air. From here food will also pass and air will also pass. Pharynx then enters into the trachea through the larynx, and there comes the larynx. So human respiratory system, it starts from the external nostril, it enters into the nasal passage enters into the pharynx enters into the larynx, and larynx enters into the trachea. So these are the structure of human respiratory system. So if we talk about the larynx is altogether a cartilaginous box. It is basically a cartilaginous box, and because it produces sound, so it will known as sound box, or it is known as voice box. So cartilaginous structure, and there are total 9 cartilages. How many cartilages? So there are 9 cartilages. Among these 9 cartilages, some are paired cartilages and some are unpaired cartilages. If we talk about the unpaired cartilages, so there are 3 cartilages which are unpaired, such as thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage, and epiglottis. So these are unpaired cartilages, and among the paired cartilages, arytenoid, corniculate, and cuneiform. These are paired cartilages. So these are present in 2 in number. So 2, 2, and 2. This becomes 6, and 1, 1, and 1. This total becomes 9. Thyroid cartilage, among these 9 cartilages, the thyroid cartilages is the largest one, and it is known as the largest cartilage among these cartilages. Thyroid cartilages has certain enlargement. So if we see the side view, so this thyroid cartilage will have this certain enlargement, and this enlargement is called thyroid. This is called thyroid notch, or it is called thyroid prominence, or it is called Adam's apple. And this Adam's apple is more prominent in male compared to female, and this is one of the secondary sexual characters which is present in male. So presence of Adam's apple is one of the secondary sexual character which is present in the male. The opening of the larynx is called glottis. So opening of the larynx is called glottis. So if we talk about the larynx, suppose this is the larynx and this is the opening of this larynx. This opening will be known as it is known as glottis, and there is a covering of there is elastic cartilages, and this covering is called epiglottis, and this covering is called epiglottis. So epiglottis, what is the function of this epiglottis? When we swallow or when we deglutition, whenever there is deglutition of food or swallowing of food, epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the larynx. Epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the larynx. So opening of larynx is called glottis, covering of glottis is called epiglottis, and this epiglottis will prevent the entry of food during the swallowing or during the deglutition of food. Larynx produces sound, and this sound production is basically done by this vocal cord. So sound production is done by the vocal cord. So vocal cords, if we talk about the male vocal cords and if we talk about the female vocal cords, so they are different among these male and female. These vocal cords, these are, if we simply take the example of real world example, so we know the guitar. So a string of guitar, if we sing the string of guitar, it is exactly like the string of guitar, means these are thin elastic fibers. These are thin elastic fibers, and vibration of these thin elastic fibers produces the sound, and this sound is production mainly done during the expiration of food. When we expire or exhale the air, there is generation of sufficient amount of pressure due to this expiration, and that sufficient amount of pressure results into the vibration of these vocal cords, and due to the vibration of this vocal cord there is production of sound. So there is production of sound. So basically sound is produced during the expiration of food. So here male vocal cords are comparatively thick compared to the female vocal cords which are thin, and male vocal cords are long compared to female which are short. Due to the thickness of this vocal cord in male voice is low pitched voice. It is low pitched voice, or in simple term we can say that it is heavy voice. So there is difference between male and female voice, and it is mainly due to this vocal cord, because male vocal cords are thick, so male voice is low pitched voice. It is also one of the secondary sexual characters. So it is also one of the secondary sexual characters in male. We have seen one of the secondary sexual character, that is Adam Seppel, and it is also one of the secondary sexual character. So this male vocal cords becomes thick due to the deposition of testosterone. So after puberty in male, there is secretion of, after the puberty in the male, there is secretion of sex hormone known as testosterone, and these testosterone get deposited on these vocal cords, due to which male vocal cord becomes thick, and due to the thickness of this vocal cord the frequency of vibration is less, and more lesser the frequency of vibration, more lesser will be the pitch of the voice. So because male vocal cords are thick, hence there is less frequency of vibration and there will be lesser pitch of the voice, hence male voice is low pitched voice. Whereas female vocal cord, because these are thin, so there will be more frequency of vibration, hence female voice is high pitched voice. Female voice is high pitched voice. So this is the difference between male vocal cords and female vocal cords, and these vocal cords produces sound especially during the expiration whenever there is generation of sufficient amount of pressure. Whenever there is generation of sufficient amount of pressure. Next part of human respiratory system is the trachea. So next part of human respiratory system is the trachea. So trachea is basically a straight tube. If we draw the structure of trachea, so trachea is simply a straight tube. So somewhat this is like trachea, and there is incomplete cartilaginous rings are present in this trachea. So this is the trachea. So this is the straight tube that extends up to the mid thoracic cavity, and if we talk about this mid thoracic cavity, it extends up to the fifth thoracic vertebra. So it extends up to the fifth thoracic vertebra, and it is supported by incomplete cartilaginous ring. So these are the incomplete cartilaginous ring. And what is the function of this cartilaginous ring? So during the expiration there is chance of collapsing of trachea. So during the expiration, this cartilaginous ring prevents the collapse of trachea. This cartilaginous ring prevents the collapse of trachea. And at the level of fifth thoracic vertebra, trachea branch into the left and right primary bronchi. So here comes this trachea. So this is up to the fifth thoracic vertebra. From the fifth thoracic vertebra, it branches into this is left bronchi and this is right bronchi. So this one is the right primary bronchi. So this is right primary bronchi and this is left primary bronchi. So this is left primary bronchi and incomplete cartilaginous ring will present in all these regions. Incomplete cartilaginous ring will be present in all these regions. So this is the extension of this trachea. Next, these bronchi, whichever we have seen here, this bronchi. So this bronchi there is further division. So they continuously get divided. So they continuously get divided and these division will continue like this. So in these divisions there is presence of incomplete cartilaginous rings. So there will be presence of incomplete cartilaginous ring. So each bronchi undergoes repeated division. Each bronchi undergoes repeated division to form primary bronchi branches into the secondary bronchi. Secondary bronchi branches into the tertiary bronchi. Tertiary bronchi branches into the bronchioles and these bronchioles further branches into the terminal bronchioles. So this trachea, primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi and initial bronchioles are supported by incomplete cartilaginous ring. So whatever the cartilaginous ring we have seen in the trachea, whatever the cartilaginous rings we have seen in the trachea, these cartilaginous ring will be present from trachea till the initial bronchioles. So this is one of the important part. And this terminal bronchiole, this further branches into a sac-like structure. If we talk about this, suppose this is the terminal bronchiole and this terminal bronchiole is finally, these are branching and this branches into a sac-like structure. So this branches into a sac-like structure and this sac-like structure is called alveoli. So this sac-like structure is called alveoli. So this is vascularized bag or we can say that this is the sac-like structure which is called alveoli. Alveoli is the main site of exchange of gases where exchange of O2 and exchange of CO2 takes place. So next, finally these whatever branching we have seen. So trachea branches into the primary bronchi, primary bronchi branches into the secondary, tertiary and terminal bronchi, then there is bronchioles and then there is alveoli. So alveoli is the terminal branching and this alveoli, these all branching will basically comprise this lung. This all branching will comprise the lungs. Lungs are covered by the membrane and this membrane is called pleura. The membrane covering the lungs are known as pleura. So outer pleura is called, there are double membrane structures. So outer side pleura is called parietal pleura, which will be in the contact of the thoracic lining. Then inner pleura is called visceral pleura, which will be in contact with the lung surface. The cavity enclosed between the parietal and visceral pleura is called pleural cavity. And this pleural cavity contains fluid which reduces the friction on the lung surface. So if we talk about the lungs, so suppose this is the trachea. Trachea, this branches into the primary and secondary bronchi. And this primary and secondary bronchi enters into this lungs. So enters into this lungs and lungs are supported by this diaphragm. So this lung will have a double layer structure. So this lung will have a double layer structure. So there will be also a double layer structure which we are calling this pleura. So this outer pleura is called parietal pleura. So this outer pleura is called parietal pleura. This inner pleura is called visceral pleura. So this inner pleura is called visceral pleura. And this cavity is called pleural cavity. So this cavity is called pleural cavity, and this cavity contains fluid, and this fluid is known as pleural fluid, and this pleural fluid will prevent the friction between this parietal pleura and this visceral pleura. So we will see the exact diagram in the coming slides. So here we are seeing the exact diagram. So this is the lining of this is the lining, this is we call as thoracic lining. So this is the thoracic lining. So this is thoracic lining, and thoracic lining, this is outer membrane. So this outer membrane is called parietal pleura, this inner membrane is called visceral pleura, and this cavity, small cavity is called this small cavity is called pleural cavity, and this pleural cavity will contain certain fluid which is known as pleural fluid. So this here we have, there is marking of pleural fluid. So this is the structure of basically whole respiratory system starting from this larynx. So this part is the larynx, covering of this larynx is epiglottis. This is the trachea. This starts trachea. Trachea branches into this primary bronchi. Then there is further branching, and this bag-like structure is called alveoli. So this bag-like structure is called alveoli. So this is right lung. So this is right lung, and this one is the left lung. So this one is the left lung. So this is the diagrammatic view of human respiratory system, and this here in the there is a depression in the left lung, and this depression of this left lung is called cardiac notch. The depression present in this left lung is called cardiac notch, where heart is located, where heart is located. Next, this lung is, when this is the cavity whichever we saw. So this is the cavity. This cavity is called thoracic cavity. So this is the cavity called thoracic cavity, and below this thoracic cavity there is presence of muscular partition called diaphragm. So there is muscular partition called diaphragm, and this thoracic cavity our lungs are situated. So if we draw the rough diagram of this lungs, so here is the our lungs will be situated like this. So in this thoracic cavity our lungs are situated. So lungs are situated in the thoracic cavity, or we call this thoracic chamber. Thoracic chamber is an airtight chamber. So airtight chamber, what is the importance of this airtight chamber? Whatever the volume change in this airtight chamber will be reflected the same amount of change in the volume in the lungs. So this thoracic chamber, these are surrounded by, on the dorsal side there is presence of vertebral column, on the ventral side there is presence of sternum, on the lateral side there is presence of ribs, and on the lower side there is presence of diaphragm. This anatomical setup of lungs in this thorax or thoracic chamber is such that any change in the volume of this thoracic cavity. So any change in this change in the will be reflected the same amount of change in this lungs or pulmonary cavity. So and this will help in this breathing process. So this will help in the process of breathing. So breathing, if we inhale, so during the inhalation, so when we inhale, so it will help in the inhalation, and when we exhale, this will also play a role in the exhalation. So there are two parts of our respiratory system. One is the conducting part. So one is the conducting part. So one is the conducting part, and another one is the exchange or respiratory part. So another one is the exchange or respiratory part. So starting from the external nostril. So if we talk about the from the external nostril, from the external nostril till the terminal bronchioles. So from the external nostril till the terminal bronchiole, this constitute the conducting part, and the function of this conducting part is to clean the air. So it clean the air from the dust particle or foreign particles. It conducts the air till the alveoli, because alveoli is the major exchange part of our lung. And this conducting part also helps in the humidification, and this also brings the air to the body temperature. So these all functions are performed by this conducting part of our respiratory system. And exchange or respiratory part starts from the alveoli. It basically starts from the respiratory bronchiole. So from the respiratory bronchiole till the alveoli. From the respiratory bronchiole till the alveoli, this constitute the exchange part. And main function of this exchange part is the exchange of gases, or with the help of diffusion. But exchange of gases means exchange of oxygen and exchange of carbon dioxide between the blood and the atmospheric air.